Have you ever really stopped to think about how a pretty small, and for a long time, kind of backward corner of the world ended up, well, dominating the entire globe? It's one of the biggest puzzles in all of history. And today, we're going to break down the secret recipe. All right, so let's set the stage here. You have to remember, for most of recorded history, we're talking 2,000 years, the real centers of gravity were places like China and India. I mean, they were the biggest, the most advanced, and by far the wealthiest civilizations on the planet. And then, in just a few hundred years, poof, the whole world map of power gets completely redrawn. And to put a number on that shift, just look at this. Around the year 1500, the countries that would become the great European empires, they controlled just a tiny fraction of global production. But you fast forward to the middle of the 20th century, and that same small group of nations controlled a mind-boggling 80% of the world's entire economic output. So what on earth happened? Now, I know what you might be thinking. It's got to be the simple stuff, right? Military power, better technology, maybe just better laws. And look, you're not wrong, but it is way more complicated than that. The real secret isn't just one of those things, but how a bunch of different factors came together at just the right time. Yeah, let's just debunk a couple of those obvious answers right away. If it was all about military might, well, the Soviet Union had the biggest army on the planet and more nukes than anyone. They should have come out on top, right? But they collapsed. Okay, so what if it's just about copying the West? Well, Japan did that perfectly. They copied Western industry, laws, even clothes, and became the world's #2 economy before hitting a wall and stagnating for the last 35 years. So you see, something much deeper is going on. So here's the crucial point. There is no single silver bullet. There's no one answer. The West's rise is best understood as a recipe, a combination of a few very powerful ingredients that when you mix them together, created this incredible self-reinforcing cycle of power. So let's break down that recipe ingredient by ingredient. And the very first ingredient is just relentless cutthroat competition. You have to picture it. Unlike the huge unified empire of China, Europe, back in the 15th century, was this fractured mess of little kingdoms and city-states, all constantly fighting, all scrapping for an edge over their rivals. Okay, check this out. On one side, you've got the Chinese Admiral Zheng He. Decades before Columbus, he's commanding these enormous fleets. We're talking hundreds of ships, nearly 30,000 men. It was this incredible display of imperial power. And then on the other side, you have Columbus. His little expedition was a tiny, high-risk venture. Just 3 ships, 90 guys. And he only got the funding from Spain because their rivals in Portugal had already turned them down. And this right here gets to the heart of the difference. Zheng He's mission was all about projecting the emperor's power, collecting tribute, showing off. Columbus's mission? It was to find a shortcut to Asia to make a profit. So later on, when China's leaders decide these big voyages are too expensive, they just stop them. But in Europe, when Columbus stumbles upon a whole new world, it kicks off this insane, multi-generational race between all these competing countries to claim land, grab resources, and get rich. Now, this competitive spirit wasn't just about grabbing land. It was also about ideas. And the real game changer here was Gutenberg's printing press. This thing kicked off the first true information revolution. All of a sudden, knowledge could be copied and spread on a massive scale. And the spread of this technology was just explosive. Because Europe was so broken up, if one king got suspicious of a printer, the guy could just pack up his press and move to the next city over to a rival. Within just 50 years, you had printing presses in over 200 cities, and they had already printed millions of books, everything from Bibles to math textbooks to navigation manuals. Meanwhile, in the powerful Ottoman Empire, the Sultan banned the printing press. The official reason was that handwritten calligraphy was a sacred art form, but what it really did was maintain the state's monopoly on information. So while Europe was being flooded with new ideas, that flow of information was completely choked off elsewhere, paving the way for Europe's scientific revolution. Okay, so you've got all this competition, all these new ideas floating around. But for any of that to work, you need a set of rules. And that brings us to our second key ingredient, the legal protection of private property. This quote from a young George Washington, it just captures the mindset perfectly. We think of him as a general, but he was also a land speculator. And the idea that you as an individual could actually own land, mark it on a map, get a legal piece of paper for it, and that no one, not even the king, could take it from you, that was a truly radical concept. And it became the bedrock of the entire Western economic system. And you can see the legacy of that idea today, clear as day. I mean, why do you think 70% of the world's millionaires live in the West? It's because stable legal systems that protect property rights act like a giant magnet for money. People are just way more willing to invest and build and save when they know their stuff is secure. It's really no surprise that even non-Western success stories like Singapore and Hong Kong built their incredible prosperity on very similar legal foundations. So, with competition and the rule of law in place, the stage was set for two more ingredients that really worked as a one-two punch. Breakthroughs in modern medicine, which created a healthier, more productive population, and the birth of a consumer culture, which created basically endless demand. First, let's just get a baseline. For almost all of human history, it didn't matter where you lived on this planet. Life was brutally short. If you made it to the age of 40, that was a real achievement. Then, in a little over a century, life expectancy in the West just doubled. Suddenly, people were living longer, healthier lives, and that meant they could work longer, they could learn more, and, critically for the economy, they could buy more stuff over their lifetime. And this was no accident. It was a direct result of that scientific revolution we were just talking about. It was fueled by competition between nations, leading to the creation of research hubs like the Pasteur Institute in Paris. This whole system has since produced the vast majority of medical breakthroughs and the giant pharmaceutical companies that still dominate the world today. But, a population that lives longer needs something to do and something to buy. And this is where a very specific cultural mindset, often called the Protestant work ethic, comes into play. It was this whole set of values that championed hard work, saving your money, and being thrifty. Just like Benjamin Franklin put it, the whole goal wasn't just to work hard, but to save your money and reinvest it. And it was this culture of saving and industry that created all the capital that would fuel the Industrial Revolution, and eventually a society of consumers. And the West became absolute masters at not just making things, but at creating the desire for them. I mean, take the diamond engagement ring. It feels like this ancient, timeless tradition, right? Well, it's not. Before World War II, it was pretty rare. But then, through this absolutely brilliant marketing campaign by the De Beers Diamond Cartel, they linked diamonds to everlasting love in movies and ads, and they basically invented a tradition out of thin air. They didn't just sell a product, they sold an idea, a whole culture of buying. So let's put this all together. We've looked at the individual ingredients, but the real magic, the real secret sauce, is how they all combine and feed off of each other. So here it is, the 5-ingredient recipe. It all starts with competition, that constant race for an edge. That in turn fueled a culture of science and discovery. This whole enterprise was supported by the rule of law, which protected private property and gave people a reason to invest. Then came health, with modern medicine creating a longer living, more productive population. And finally, you have a culture of consumption that creates the demand to keep the whole engine humming. And this, right here, is probably the most important takeaway from all of this. It's not one single thing. It's the system. It's how they all fit together. You can't have a modern consumer society without the massive productivity that comes from science and medicine. You can't have those scientific breakthroughs without the free competition of ideas. And you're not going to get people to invest long-term without the rule of law. Every single piece depends on the others. This recipe, these 5 ingredients working together, literally defined global power for 500 years and built the world we are all living in today. But now, as that global balance of power seems to be shifting once again, it leaves us with one final and pretty fascinating question to think about. What will be the ingredients in the recipe for the next 500 years?